had Del Taco for the first time the other day.
Ever? You know how I know that you never did the drive to E3 down I-5?
Did you all always stop at Del Taco?
That's Santanella Del Taco, I think, is the only Del Taco I've ever been to. They did open one downtown San Francisco subsequently that I might have gone in, but then again, why would you go into a Del Taco voluntarily?
I feel like Del Tacos in the Valley are maybe like with a sample size of 1. Del Tacos in the desert much better than other Del Tacos.
Wait, what is the Valley? You're not in the Valley, right?
No, I'm in the desert, the Sonoran Desert, south of the Valley. I think
the Valley is like halfway.
The Valley, like I feel like the Valley ends south of Bakersfield, and then you go over a mountain, and then you're in another valley, and then there's another valley after that. That's where I am.
It's kind of the midpoint between the Bay Area and SoCal. Would you say
Bakersfield?
Or no?
Oh no, Bakersfield's a home stretch. Once you get to Bakersfield, you're like 2 hours from LA.
Oh, okay. That's the Valley.
That's the Valley.
So the Valley Del Tacos, good or bad?
I mean, I'm in a different valley, so I can't say. Maybe it's all valleys. Maybe it's just this one. I'll find out. But the tacos, pretty good, I'm going to say.
So, I mean, the whole point of the Del Taco is they have tacos right?
Yeah, we got some chili cheese fries, some like fry business that was pretty good. Nacho fries, whatever they were.
They have hamburgers?
They apparently the hamburgers are good. I did not get hamburgers.
Oh, what?
But I'll tell you what I did do is I got a quesadilla that was wrapped around a taco. And then they put cheese in between the taco shell, the crunchy taco shell, and the flour tortilla. So it was like an extra cheesy taco.
This is almost like the vaunted double-decker taco of Taco Bell Yore.
It's no chicken chalupa though.
Man, how did you not get a hamburger? Like I feel like when you go to a combo restaurant like that, you have got to experience both sides of the combo in equal measure if you're going to get the full effect. When
I ordered it online, it told me how many calories were in the quesadilla tacos.
You don't never, as we will find out soon in the midst of this episode. Don't look at the numbers. I'm going to order a burger next. The fries were the high point, I think. The taco was pretty good. The fries were exceptional. Wow.
Yeah.
High praise for a restaurant that's splitting its competency between two halves.
You want to talk about splitting competency between two halves? Our other fast food find is the Wiener Schnitzel, which I'd never been to either.
I have not either.
It's a hot dog place. They also sell corn dogs.
Ooh.
The corn dogs, pretty good. Like they're fried, they're crunchy on the outside, they're a hot dog inside. It's everything you want from a corn dog.
Do you like a sweet-ish corn dog batter?
I like a little bit of a. I like the primary thing I'm looking for is crunch. But yeah, you want the cornbread to be a sweeter cornbread, I think.
A little mustard on there, get some tart.
I put a mustard on there. You know, if you ask them at Wiener Schnitzel, they'll give you nacho cheese sauce.
I just loaded their website. They sell it by the can.
Yeah, you can get also, but like splitting the competency, the Wiener Schnitzel here also is a Tasty Freeze, which I didn't think existed anymore.
Whoa.
Yeah. I haven't been to a Tasty Freeze since I was like a little kid. There was one on Route 50 near my grandparents' house outside DC. And like, it was one that my parents both went to independently with their parents when they were kids. And so they took me when I was like 5 and we went there and sweated in the drive-through and then sat outside and ate some ice cream. Ice cream's.
I just navigated to the Tasty Free section of the Wiener Schnitzel. I cannot believe I just said it in German style.
I believe it's pronounced Wiener Schnitzel, Brad.
Excuse me, the Wiener Schnitzel's website. I found the Tasty Free section.
Uh-huh.
I don't like the way they spell freeze. I'm sorry.
Freeze?
No E on the end. Freez.
Oh, monstrous.
That's bad. It's almost as monstrous as the fact that one Del Taco I've been to is also a truck stop. So not only is it half fast food Mexican food, half fast food hamburgers, it's also half truck stop.
I mean, the nice thing about that is it means your beverage choices expand dramatically.
That's
right?
true.
Because like the real problem with Taco Bell is that it's a Pepsi brand. So you got to hope that they have Dr. Pepper when you hit the door there.
Sure.
Or you go all in on that Baja Blast, right?
Yeah.
But if you have a truck stop adjacent to a Taco Bell, that means the whole world of possibilities open. You can get a Red Bull, you get a 0-calorie, no alcohol beer. You could get like a Arizona iced tea.
You want to eat a taco and a hamburger and then chase it with a pound of beef jerky. You can do that.
God, that sounds really good. Welcome to Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod. I'm Will.
I'm Brad.
We, Brad, are joined today by Casey Johnston, who is a tech health science editor who recently started a newsletter called She's a Beast about getting strong, being strong, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Casey, welcome. Hello. It's so good to have you.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here.
You have, okay, so full disclosure, we've known each other for a kind of long time at this point.
I know, it's been so long.
you've gone on this fitness journey over the last, you the rest of the tech journalists have been over here just getting larger and larger as time goes on. And 8 or 10 years ago now, it seems like a long time ago, you kind of got serious about fitness in a way that very few tech journalists usually do. And it's been really fun to watch and learn from you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Should I tell that story in brief? Is this a good time for that?
Yeah, that's what we hear primarily. Like, were you just doing tech, and then you transitioned into fitness and tech? Like, was there tech before the fitness? Pretty
much just tech. I started working at Wirecutter, and I was doing more health type stuff around this time. But yeah, I started lifting weights a little over 7 years ago. It was very transformative for me, for somebody who had always been focused on cardio and losing weight and, trying to eat as little as possible. The mentality around strength training was very different, which I'm sure it seems like we're going to talk about a lot of aspects of that, but, it was really transformative for me and very exciting. Couldn't stop talking about it. Eventually, the editor at the Hairpin at the time, Sylvia Killingsworth, asked me to start writing an advice column for the Hairpin about lifting weights. And that turned out to be pretty popular. So I kept doing it. I've been doing that for about 5 years now. And, I'm just very passionate about it. I have religion about it, I think, is what keeps me in it and what draws other people to it. So it's funny.
Do you remember what was the spark that turned you onto it? Was it just, I'm sure it could be as simple as just you read a column that got you interested in it, but did something kick off this passion for weightlifting?
I've written about it and talked about it here and there, but it's not I don't think it's that well known of a story, and it's not even that good of a story, but it was I saw a Reddit post of a woman who posted her 6-month weightlifting progress on, I think the r/fitness subreddit, and it went fairly viral. I think it got reposted on whatever the sites were at the time. I think Dig was on its comeback at that, or second comeback. And I was very blown away by the fact that she didn't get bulky. The workouts were not that hard or long or intense. She was eating a lot of food. She was only working out 3 times a week. And she had just sort of she had really enjoyed it. And it had not done to her body what I thought weightlifting did. So I was I feel like everything I know about this is wrong and this is shocking. This is exactly how I would like to be living. And I've never sort of heard of weightlifting in these terms ever before. So that got me into that subreddit, and then an adjacent subreddit that's XX Fitness that's more oriented toward women. And at the time I got into it, it was very about strength training. So that was it. That was the big moment for me.
It's kind of it sounds almost like an anybody can do this, right? It's it's not actually you don't have to be a full-time bodybuilder to benefit from this, right?
Right. That was my understanding, was that you were sort of really, really all about it. It was ironically, it's my life now, but it was it either had to be your life, or you were more of, if you were a casual, you were doing just the elliptical for 20 minutes. And that was never the twain shall meet. But that community sort of allowed me to realize that there's a lot of people who have a much more casual involvement with lifting weights, and that it did exactly what I was looking for exercise to do in my life. So that was very watershed transformative moment.
I was going to say, one of the things that you talk about a lot in the column, at least, was being able to see the results and having that feedback. I've run and done distance running for years, and it turns out I really hate distance running, right? It's boring. It hurts. It's gotten harder when I've gotten older instead of easier. And it doesn't I feel nice at the end of a run, but then I really hurt the next day. And like, I don't feel like it does anything. I mean, my heart's probably in a little bit better shape than it would have been otherwise. But other than that, like I don't feel great about myself every time I go for a run. And I kind of like but I think part of my challenge has always been finding the thing that I like to do enough that I'm willing to do it like for 3 hours or, 30 minutes a day, 3 hours, 3 times a week or 4 times a week or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, I used to be a runner. Before I was a lifter, I was a runner, and I had sort of a similar issue where I never liked running in my entire life. Hated it. I played sports in high school. I hated it so much. Hated to run a mile, even though that's like, 10 minutes of running. But I think that's another sort of reason that I am out here talking about this stuff, is that I feel like the general conversation around exercise is very impoverished by not having a strong component of strength training, or resistance training, as it's sometimes called. And I think a lot more people would like it and I'm sorry, my cat's screaming at me.
It's okay. Cats are welcome here.
Cats also very passionate about strength training.
I know, truly, my hype squad. I think a lot of people would get a lot out of it. They just don't know very much about it, or like how to get started. And like, I would allow that it's a little bit more complex than just like getting on some shoes and going outside, which is what I liked about running. But it was very cool to realize that it had like unique things to offer that were also accessible to me as somebody who didn't want to be like a football player or a bodybuilder,
Actually, like that's an interesting point. Like, yes, going out and running is literally just putting on shoes and going, right? And like that is actually the learning curve of strength training that I find intimidating, and I assume a lot of people do, is like is my form right? Am I doing enough reps? Too many reps? Like, am I even mixing the muscle groups proper? You know what I mean? Like, there seems like there's a lot of technical questions to answer. Like, how do you recommend somebody climb that hill and start getting into that stuff?
There is a learning curve to it that I wish we had more sort of literacy about built into, when we're growing up. I feel like we are taught to run and taught to do certain strength things, like most people may at some point in their childhood, like learned to do a pull-up, or pull-ups were something that they were expected to do at some point, but like no one's really expected to do basic strength training. I've actually heard or seen evidence of parents talking about their kids in gym classes being taught now to like squat or deadlift, and that's very exciting to me. But when we're adults and we've already been through that phase and we're playing catch up, it's not that easy. I actually started working on a program for this specifically just because I feel like it's such an issue. There's a lot of starting strength training programs out there, but a lot of them assume you can already lift a barbell. They handhold pretty well in terms of like what's good form for a squat or for benching or whatever, but they presume a certain level of strength and like ability and willingness and comfort with using a barbell, whereas most people I know are literally too afraid to enter a weight room, don't really know what a barbell is versus like a dumbbell, or why is it different from weight machines, all of these kinds of things. So I don't really have a perfect answer for how one gets into it from like absolute zero, but that's like what I'm working on now. I hope to put forward a solution in the very near future.
I was going to say that's often the problem with things that are like high skill or high knowledge, like high barrier to entry, is that typically, this is why I'm excited about it. This is one of the things I liked about your column over the years and your work in this space. But like you, if the person who's doing it can't break it down all the way to the bare minimums, then you it's much harder for somebody to get in, because like if you don't, like you said, if you don't know there's a dumbbell and a barbell, then how do you know which one whether you're picking up the right one in the right way at the right time?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does require a little bit of investment, but I also like to say, like, if I add up all of the time in my life that I spent like in my youth, workouts came in the form of like in the backs of like women's magazines. There would be little workouts, 3 sets of 20 like chair dips and modified push-ups and like all these little like Russian twists, these kinds of things. If I
Ladies'
add up,
Home Journal kind of fitness guide, right?
Exactly. If I add up all of the time that I spent looking at those workouts and like trying to understand them and do them and then abandon them, and like if I had just put that into doing strength training instead, it would have added up in favor of just learning basic regular strength training instead of all of these little foofy programs I didn't really understand even the point of. They were like to lose weight, whereas this was much more straightforward. And I wish someone had just put this in my hands way earlier on, like even when I was a teen. And I'm very sad that no one did, but I like want that for other people.
Well, so one of the things okay, I have a we're going to skip forward to the future of the conversation here. One of the things that I love about what you do is use science-based information and like there's a focus on like things that actually work versus the FUD that kind of lives around all of these like a lot of fitness spaces. There's a lot of quick fixes and like, 5 simple hacks that will turbocharge your fat burn or whatever it is.
Pseudoscience type stuff.
Yeah, pseudoscience type stuff. Thanks, Brad. How do you separate that stuff as a journalist, and have you built a panel of experts that you can consult at this point, or are you what's your process like for that? I'm kind of curious as a former journalist.
I would say I don't have like live people who I reach out to piecemeal. I'm like, hey, is this real? Like I've just done a lot of reading of my own. I have been a science journalist since I got out of college, and I went to college for science. So I consider myself like a pretty good evaluator of experiments and papers and studies and these sorts of things. And I've read a lot of books now about strength training, and I feel like I have a pretty good barometer. I think, and then it also helps that like most stuff, trends that you hear about are not necessarily bullshit, but they are kind of the icing or the cherry on the cake of health. Like there's stuff that like you're going to get it's a Pareto principle situation where from 20% of what you do, you're going to get 80% of the results, and then the opposite for the rest of it. Okay. Most of the things you hear about and, you read on, I don't even want to name any sites.
Yeah, don't name the
news
sites.
Tends to be more of the like kind of fiddly stuff that you can play around with once you have the basics down. But I think most people don't have the basics down. So that's like more what I focus on, I feel like.
Are there any like popular misconceptions out there that just really bug the hell out of you? Like, I don't know why this is the one I wrote down, but like I've heard for years from different people like, oh, you shouldn't eat late at night. No, it doesn't matter when you eat. It's just how many calories you get. Like maybe that's too revealing of my snacking habits, but like, is there anything like that out there that you want to correct the record on that just bugs you?
I mean, that one that you're quoting is definitely one of those things where it's like, that's not make or break to your health, whether you eat late at night or not. It's like, are you eating roughly in balance with your physical activity, and are you getting your physical activity? Is what you're eating like basically decently healthy? Those things matter way more than like when you're eating, even like when it comes to a lot of people in lifting and strength training to like talk about nutrient timing, as it's called. When you eat certain things in relation to when you work out, when you get up. But that's one of the sort of things that the return like is small.
10%.
Yes, it's like
once you're trying to get the last 10%
priority
out.
Pyramid, if you will.
Sounds like I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, is there anything like that bugs me normally? I mean, I've touched on this a bit already, but just the idea that like weight loss is the solution to all health problems. It's really not. I think there's like quite a lot of science that's emerging, and this is something that I don't talk a ton about because there's like a lot of movement in the research space around the role of like body weight specifically in health, but I think there is way too much focus on it as a measure of health, or as what the sort of point of working out or taking care of oneself should be. Most people I know who work out do it because they're like trying to lose weight, trying to lose just a little bit more, to be a little bit more toned, or like, and they're doing it usually via the activities that have been touted as the calorie burning activities, which is it's very short-term thinking in a way that a lot of people aren't familiar with. And this is like a kind of complex topic that I could go on forever about, but it's one of those very, very deeply embedded things that I think is very wrong, very misplaced, and needs way more debunking. I think I'm starting to see more people talk about, even the New York Times Well blog, which is sometimes my enemy, but has lately run some more sound articles on strength training, and that's been like exciting to me.
Well, it's funny because the thing, like, my grandfather was a weightlifter in Brooklyn in his teens and 20s and 30s, and the thing that my grandmother told me after he'd passed was like, look, he probably would have lived longer if he'd done more cardio, and she was a very pragmatic woman, but also that was the perception I always had, was that strength training was something you did to make yourself look the way you wanted, and that cardio was something you did if you wanted to, defeat the imminent specter of death. And it seems like the science isn't all the way, like, it seems like that's one of those things like, hey, maybe eating spinach is really good for you, or carrots give you good vision. That's a remnant of some like deeply seated assumptions from like the 20s and 30s that just got codified into fitness law, right?
Right. Yes. So like, I don't want to overstate like the only right thing is strength training and cardio can only be wrong. That's not true. Cardio has lots of things to offer our general state of health. But if people are going to exercise, they tend to beeline for the cardio and like don't think about the strength training. As you say, like another sort of frame of mind about it is often like it's about aesthetics, almost strictly about aesthetics, and only like a particular kind of aesthetic, a big, muscular man aesthetic.
Hello, Kitty.
But strength training has a lot of health benefits to offer that I think people are only sort of starting. I say people, like scientists, people are studying this, like trying to capture in studies. And it's tricky because I think, as we know, generally studying humans is not very easy, because things like your training background and your genetics and like that kind of stuff can really muddy results. But generally speaking, strength training has to offer, it's great for bone density. It's really great for maintaining your lean body mass. That's like a really big thing that I did this very beloved among my followers Instagram post that was sort of trying to explain the principles of body mass and like how it relates to dieting too much and how it relates to strength training, which is that when you diet, especially over and over in a cyclical, aggressive way, you tend to diet away your muscle mass. When you strength train, you build your muscle mass back up. So like strength training sort of runs in reverse the damage that too much dieting does. So that's a big one, especially for a culture where people are so frequently kind of like dieting aggressively on and off, and not working out very much in general. Their lean body mass tends to be lower. And we're only sort of like starting to integrate this into our overall thinking about health and, lifestyle maintenance type of health specifically.
Is it accurate? Like my perception has been that having more muscle mass helps with metabolic rate. Like it actually helps kind of burn fat faster.
That's
or helps
generally true.
Is that accurate? Okay.
Yes. So like this was a big thing that held me back from strength training earlier on in my life, was that I had read that it doesn't burn as many calories as like running does. But yes, when you have more muscle mass, you burn more calories all of the time, because it's like in the way you move, like you're a little bit more your body's like a little bit more efficient, I think. I don't want to say too much because I'm not quite sure of the exact process, but that's generally true, that like the benefits of maintaining your health with strength training are not restricted to like how many calories you burn during the session that you're lifting, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah. So what are, for you with your kind of more strength focused regimen, like what are the metrics of success? Because like, you know, you implied that we've kind of been conditioned by society to just look at the number on the scale, right? And like that number, I know that number is reductive, if not like straight up deceptive at times, right? So like for you, is it more body fat percentage, or is it more based on like how much you can lift? Like what are the like the numbers, the progress trackers that you look at?
I am a former disordered eater, so I try not to like think too much about how much I weigh, or even lately specifically like how much I eat. If I had more specific like body composition goals, or if I were really trying deliberately to get stronger, I would sort of home in on that a little bit more. And I have in the past like tracked my food mostly to make sure I was eating enough, because I tend to be like, oh no, I don't need to eat dessert or the whole sandwich or all of these things. And then tracking food actually allowed me to realize, oh, I like short on calories, should have eaten that whole sandwich, need to eat some cookies, these sorts of things, have a protein shake. But the metrics of success for me right now are basically, am I having fun training when I do it most of the time? Am I doing it, you know, at least 3 days a week is what I'm going for right now. I just started a 5-day-a-week program where like the workouts are a little shorter, but more frequent. And I think once I sort of do a few months of that program, I'll probably move to a program that's a little bit more achievement or PR oriented. I would love to like finally hit a 300-pound deadlift, ideally more than that. I would love to, let's see, I think my all-time bench is like 142 pounds. I would love to like hit 150. These are like, you only get progress in these little amounts when you've been lifting for a really long time. And I could probably get more if I tried harder, but
it's fine about finding a balance of what you're comfortable with and like what is personally gratifying, right? Like,
yes.
It's not, you don't want to spend all your time in the gym because you have other stuff going on, right?
Right. It's like my metric of success now is, can it sort of occupy a limited place in my life in terms of, I don't feel like I'm thinking about my programming or what I'm eating all of the time, that I can sort of, this was my goal all along when I started strength training. And even when I was running, I was like, I don't want to have to worry or feel guilty about eating food or that I'm not working out enough. And this ecosystem works much better for that in my experience.
It's funny because this is kind of the problem. Like one of the beautiful things about the internet is it exposes you to the deep end of every community and subculture and everything on that's available everywhere. And so you go in and you look at our fitness and you see the people for whom fitness is like their hobby and maybe their job and like the thing that they enjoy doing more than anything else in the world. And man, that is never going to be me, right? Like realistically,
right.
I'm probably pretty good with like your theory of, hey, let's put the fitness off in the minimal place possible and like build it a nice little house over here where it can do its thing. But like, I feel like that Reddit effect is kind of dangerous sometimes because it does. Like I look at somebody on one of the fitness subreddits, and I'm like, oh man, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like I don't even want to do that. I'll just do nothing instead. Let me go have another bag of Cheetos and call it an evening.
I mean, yes, that's like, I've sort of clocked this as well about the internet in general, which is that it's hard to find role models who are in that in-between space of like not super accomplished, but also are into something. I kind of try to be that person. That's what I like about your. That's one of the things that attracted me to your columns. Like, it's a good place to be, I think.
Yeah, like that's the vibe I got when you talked about like you're not chasing numbers necessarily so much. Like it sounds like you're emphasizing more of a qualitative kind of measurement than a quantitative one of like,
right.
The goal is like, do I feel good about myself and how strong I am? And am I enjoying life? Good. Yes. Fine. Done. Like that sounds like a way healthier relationship than staring at numbers all the time.
Yes. I mean, I would say it's like so far not that successful of an enterprise because it's hard to express a journey of the mind on Instagram, for instance. It's like someone with abs who's like, here's how to get my abs, plays much better on these platforms than me being like, I feel so good about myself and the way that I don't have to think about working out that much, but I still enjoy it when I do. So yeah, I try to be that person. And a few times, like, I think people have posted my account on Reddit being like, this is a normal person who has a normal involvement with exercise. And it's like, not like they're a trainer and they have all the time in the world. And they're like, why doesn't everybody else, spend hours and hours in the gym or like learn how to do this new exercise or movement that seems very complicated and maybe unnecessary, but I don't know because I'm just a normal person who doesn't know fitness stuff that well. But I wish there were a better resource for that sort of, like, we really are about accomplishment and excellence in America here, I guess. And it makes it a little difficult, especially with the internet now, to find more sustainable
like
feeling.
role models. Yeah. And kind of a guidance.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, I want to talk a little bit about like the state of digital journalism in the 21st century. But before we get to that, I have food questions.
Okay.
This is a place like you talked about food tracking a little bit before. I guess the real question is, let's take a step back. Where to start? Like, if you're sitting here and you're like, this all sounds great. Casey seems like she knows what's going on and has a view for this that I haven't really heard before. Like, how should I get started? Do I need to talk to my doctor? Should I hire a personal trainer? Do I need to join a gym? Or can I just go like empty out some milk jugs and fill them with sand or something and go out in the backyard and start hucking them around?
Well, I think I would ask first, what is your goal specifically?
I just want to live forever. It's really simple.
Okay.
Never die.
Interesting.
Me too.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Oh boy.
I'm not a billionaire either, which is I know puts me at an immediate deficit, it turns out.
I think if this is like a hypothetical specific person I were talking to, I would have a lot more questions about like, okay, what does this really look like for you practically? Like, and what does your life look like now? But
okay. I mean, I can give you some specific answers here, Casey. I'm a 46-year-old dad. I have very little free time. I'm really, really lazy, and I've grown an enormous beard during the quarantine. So
Good.
Yeah, it's not a great place where I was starting.
Well, because this is my thing, but also because I truly did find it so transformative. I think a lot of people, when they're talking about how to get started with health, it's a lot of like, pay attention to what you eat, which I think is like a fine tip, and like trying to get like a serving of vegetables with every meal, that sort of thing. And I think that's all well and good. I kind of like to advocate for, it's not quite the opposite end of the spectrum, but another angle, which is like, try working out in there first. I think it would make a big difference for a lot of people, especially if they gave strength training a try. I could probably give you some starting programs to link in the show notes.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah, but I think there's a few basics that it's good to get familiar with, and it's not just about, how your body looks, but I like strength training because, like, to go back to the sort of overall goal of things, is that I like to feel like I can move well in my life. And when it comes time to like pick up a box of cat litter or carry my laundry downstairs or whatever, then I'm not like struggling. And strength training really is like night and day difference with that. And I think more people, if they tried it, could experience that difference for themselves. So, and it's not just about like being as strong as you possibly can, but building a functional amount of strength for your daily life. And not just strength, but for instance, to squat to depth, as we say, deep enough, that requires a decent amount of mobility that I think a lot of people don't have. Same with deadlifting, same with a few of the other movements. So I think give it a try. Even just learning how to do the movements without weight, you'll get something out of. When you start adding in weight, you'd be surprised how quickly you can get quite a bit stronger just by adding a little bit of weight every session. Like, you can do it. I think people would be shocked if they tried it, how sort of low hanging the fruit is of strength, from like absolutely zero to, let's say, deadlifting 135 pounds. I think like everybody could do that more or less. Some,
barring like health
obvious
injuries
exceptions,
or whatever.
but like,
yeah.
I can attest to that a little bit. I mean, I'm the most amateur novice on the planet, but like I've been doing some really basic, just like squats, presses, I guess they're called. Like, I don't even know what they're called, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like tricep lifts, just some basic stuff like that. After doing literally nothing for a year of the pandemic, right? Like literally, like I didn't understand how much my commute, like I would, I'd walk to a bus stop, get off the bus, walk another like 8 blocks to an office, back every day, like walk around to get lunch and stuff. Like, I didn't realize how much of that is exercise, right? Until it wasn't in my life anymore. And then after a year of not doing anything, it's like I can't walk up the stairs to my apartment without being winded, right? It was terrible. So just after like 3-4 months of just some basic stuff, like I can stand up off the floor now with ease, like that sounds pathetic, but like it really is like such a quality of life thing to just realize like, oh, like my shoulder doesn't hurt it. Like these joint pains I had are gone, it's like I can lift this chair and move it without like struggling with it, like it really just makes your life better.
I'm picturing you just with the chair leg up on one hand now, Brad.
No, not quite Charles Atlas over here, but
I don't want to sell my partner out too much, but one thing he complains of sometimes is like he's very tall, so like not being able to bending over to like get things on the floor or a low shelf is difficult for him. And I'm kind of like, if we can't bend over, that sounds very much like being, 70 years old. Like, we should get you in a nursing home. If you're roughly my age, you can't bend down. So things like that. It's like stuff like that. Sometimes I still surprise myself that I can just sort of move around in certain ways where I'm expecting to be stiffer or like have it be harder, and stuff like that is much more. It really smooths that groove, I guess.
Yeah, it really. It was especially an epiphany for me because I'm 42, and a lot of the like aches and pains, joint issues, like lack of strength and stuff I was having, I was just chalked it up to being old. I was like, oh, I guess this is what being 40 is like, right? But like,
yes.
no, like I put the effort in, and all of a sudden it's like all that stuff is gone. It's like, oh wait, you're not just like a trapped by your age, right? Like you can push back against that stuff.
That's another thing that I think I wish we had more sort of data on was how big of a difference this would make for people who are getting a little bit older. Like, I have peers now who complain of back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain. Sometimes they get these like spasms that they have to lie down for an entire day, and they're 31. And I'm like, oh man, like this, I feel like I know it takes initiative, and it's not, exercise is like not everyone's one true passion in life, but I truly think the time investment is so minimal and the payoffs are so great, like minimal compared to, how much time we have in a day and how much time can be taken up by, say, a back spasm that lays you out for a week, unpredictably. How much of that could be managed through a little bit more deliberate training like this?
Casey, we've reached the portion of the show where we talk about the apps.
We are bound to talk about apps sooner or later.
We got to talk about something technology here. Is there tech stuff that you like or tech stuff that you don't like? I know, like everything from like your fitness trackers to your smartwatches to your. It seems like the food tracking apps are probably good for limited time, but I'm also curious like what you think about stuff like Ring Fit and like the weird gamification of fitness stuff that happens and how you feel about that stuff.
I feel like the gamification, if it works for someone, I'm like, do it. I feel like I rarely see it be the thing that keeps people in working out long term. It might help them get started or sort of like understand where they're at. That seems to be really big, especially when it's like, you know, you get an Apple Watch and you're like, oh, I only walk 500 steps a day. Like, that's me sometimes, a lot of the time. But so like, it's good for that. I don't think it's great for like, as a personal trainer would say, long-term adherence. But if it helps you with we call in my community Discord, someone came up with this, calling just getting off the couch the hardest lift. If it helps you with the hardest lift,
oh my God,
then by all means, you know.
Now we have an episode title. Wonderful.
But I don't know. Like there's good apps that are tools if we want to talk about that as well. I always used my MyFitnessPal for food tracking. You have to like deliberately turn some of the weight loss features off and make them stop. But it just has like the biggest food database that's like very complete and like generally accurate. I think Chronometer is another one that's popular with some of the folks in my Discord. I personally want to make an app that just tracks the protein content of food. This has been like a major request of our audience that like, it's like, you know, calories are a little bit whatever, or like how much carbs versus fat. You just kind of want to know protein. I'm like, I want to make that app. I want it in the world. And then I was just actually asking them about tracking workouts, what apps they use for that earlier today. The folks in your Discord. Yeah, I don't think I got any really good answers, but I've only ever used like a notebook and Google Sheets for my workouts. And a lot of, I think maybe even most coaches, strength training coaches, personal trainers who will give you programs that, especially if they're writing them for you specifically, will give them in the form of a Google Sheet. It's sort of like the currency. Other than that, I've used the app Strong a bit to like put in workouts. And I think the Strong Lifts app is also quite good if you're like at the level of being able to handle a barbell. I think it starts you with the barbell, but it's like, it sort of automates certain things about the workouts, I think, which is like, I took a deload week, as we say, or like I went on vacation, like how much weight should I take off of my squat that I'm attempting to do now that I'm back at it, and it'll sort of do that for you.
Well, one of the things that I thought was really interesting as you were getting started was when you were learning about like bulking weeks and all that stuff. Because like I think my perception of fitness, and I know I said we were going to change subjects here a minute ago, but like it was cool because you were like, look, I'm eating like a ton, which seems nice. Mm-hmm. And then you should explain this, not me. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that I had to yet another aspect of lifting that I think I had to really intensively study in order to get, and I was sort of like didn't even really know what the terms meant. Cut and bulk. I think they're slightly more familiar to men because like a lot of sports.
If you were in the football, wrestling,
football,
whatever,
wrestling, like anything with weight classes, it would figure more heavily in there. But yeah, bulking is when you take what we call your maintenance calories, which is like if you're working out and eating, basically your body weight is not changing. You're just sort of like where you're at. When you're bulking, you add 20% more calories or so to like your caloric budget in the interest of building muscle. So you can build, the rule of thumb is you can build about 1 pound of muscle per month for women, 2 pounds for men. You build it really slowly, but a 20% calorie bump is about where you need to be, at least in the stage that I was at, which was like pretty noob-ish level of bulking. But you eat more and it really gives you, you feel it in the gym. You just like feel so strong and like your numbers are going up and it's very validating. And I've like never felt better about my body than when I was like, you know, done bulking. I was like, I feel so good. I feel so capable. I feel great. And like you're like, I don't want to promise strength training is like the magic fix to everything, but you have your bad days. When you're bulking, you feel so good basically every day, and it's incredible.
I'm sorry, I was going to get you to expand on that because you mentioned protein content and tracking that earlier. Could you talk about just like general do's and don'ts for what to eat or not eat before and after a workout, like resistance type workout? Not for like, not necessarily like Arnold Schwarzenegger bodybuilder style, but just like regular people doing light
13
basic
eggs, Brad.
strength stuff.
Well, here's the thing. It doesn't matter that much.
Okay.
You don't want to make yourself sick. Like if you eat a full meal and immediately go work out, that rubs some people the wrong way. I actually find for strength training, that's okay. It'd be a problem if I were running. For strength training, it's actually mostly
just from
fine.
like you feel like you're going to throw up the entire time and be uncomfortable, not
right.
You're going to
right.
harm
So for
yourself.
some people, yes.
Yeah.
So be aware of that. But in terms of talking about the sort of pyramid of priorities in terms of your health, it makes a much bigger difference to be sort of like adequately fed throughout the day than what you eat specifically before or during or after.
Okay.
The more specific answer is generally the advice for more so for like athletes who are really trying to optimize their performance. They'll tend to cluster their simple carbs around their workouts. So like candy, bread. I know one guy whose pre-workout meal sort of was 2 packets of ramen. So you tend to want to concentrate fats, especially away from immediately before or after your workout. A little bit of protein is good, but you don't want to, have your stomach full, like trying to. I think another thing is like it draws the blood away from the rest of your body if you're like trying to digest a lot of food, stuff like that. But yeah, simple carbs are not only encouraged but necessary in lifting. It really helps. It can really help fuel your workout, especially if you like haven't, for whatever reason, had a lot of carbs during the day, to have like something sugary before or during, and particularly for me, especially after. If I don't have like a good dose of carbs, I will fall asleep after I work out very consistently. It's incredible. I won't even like feel that tired immediately after, but an hour or so after, I will just shut down.
Just sitting on the couch and just zonk right out.
Yes.
This is fabulous, Casey. Before we move on to the talk about how journalism's going in the 21st century, like I think this is you should plug your newsletter and let people know where to find you on Instagram and Twitter and wherever else.
Yes. So I moved the home of my column, which I've been doing for 5 years now. I think I mentioned that already. Ask a Swole Woman was my advice column. Now I'm bringing it to a newsletter format. The newsletter is She's a Beast. It's a little bit of a expansion of the remit of my columns. So I'm talking about like, links to news articles that are relevant to this space, some analysis of the fitness community more broadly, general thoughts, unprompted thoughts that I might have about things that are going on, or about sort of softer subjects around lifting. Like I just wrote one that was about why it's hard to form a fitness goal, for instance. So yeah, I think subscribe to that. As I was saying before we started recording, I am not yet making Barry Weiss money by any stretch. So can you really use any support for this newsletter that's out there?
It's she'sabeast.substack.com.
That's correct.
Let's talk about digital journalism. But like, how did things evolve for you over the last few years? Like, are you feeling like things are going well with digital journalism, or are we like through the disastrous pivot to video years and into some new disaster? Like, what do you feel like is the state of the union as a working New York journalist?
Wait, are you asking me or asking Brad?
No, I was asking you. Brad's not
You're asking
working
me.
here.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I was like, you said New York and I working journalist. I was like, is that me? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, that's you, right?
Yes. Well, disclaiming anything that one might say about my former employer, to be very clear, this is not about them. But I think the video question in particular is tough because I know exactly what draws media companies to that. It's like just the payout for
its CPMs are way higher.
Production. Yes, the CPMs are so much higher. And they look at them and they're like, how hard can it be to make a video? Not 10 times harder than writing an article, surely. Not 10 times more time investment. When really it's like, I think the equation works out such that it's, I mean, obviously this is not my actual business, but I know, I sort of know where it comes from. And I think it's been true for as long as I've been doing this. Companies have been like trying to get into video. I did some videos for Ars Technica, I think, like roughly on this basis where it was just like the CPMs are great. And I was sort of making these videos entirely myself and like filming them and setting up the lights and editing them and all of this stuff. And it was like a lot of work. I didn't even know. I didn't know what the things were to like ask for or whatever. When I was 23 and making videos in my apartment, but
they were very funny videos for what
thank you.
It was yeah.
I like to think they were cute, but I don't know, like what's the state now? I think I'm going to say I'm less pessimistic than I feel like most people that I know about media. I think people have been like, there's obviously a real difficulty with like where the money is concentrated and the companies that sort of have control. Like I was just yelling at some friends about this at a birthday party the other day where I was like, the biggest mistake anyone made in media was letting Google and Facebook and these companies sort of insert themselves between the audience and the publications and turning that into metrics and like what it really quote unquote means for someone to like see an ad and like whether not even that the process that they have for assessing whether showing somebody an ad translates to a sale is necessarily true, but they really sold it to everyone as being true. And it just like cratered all of the money from digital articles. It's like, and now I don't know if that's ever coming back like to the web. And
I mean, the ad revenue from like when I was working at ours to now, like you'd think that would be higher, but it turns out it's the cost per thousand users, the CPM, is a fraction now of what it was in 2000 when we were writing Celeron 300 overclocking guides and nonsense like that.
And like, in my opinion, I am not a scholar of this, but I think I have informed thoughts, which is that like, that's directly a result of allowing these people to insert themselves in the middle. And like, I saw an article a few weeks ago that was like, wow, TV revenue is higher than ever, despite that fewer people are logging fewer minutes than ever of watching TV. And it's like, do you know why that is? There's no one in there saying, actually, showing an ad on Hulu has like this precise dollar translation to a sale. Therefore, like, it's like Hulu has that information, but like, there's no independent intermediary whose business motivation is to take money from both sides in order to make themselves money. There's Hulu selling ads, I think, as far as I know.
And a journalist kind of did a thanks.text the other day when he was leaving GameSpot. I saw where he did a thread of all the things that he's learned working in media over the last however many years.
Oh, I think I saw this but didn't read it. I want to look it up.
It went pretty viral. It was pretty good. But the big thing that I think he struck on that people don't talk about is the kind of reversion to the mean that like if you're like, I've been lucky enough that I've been in businesses where we didn't write for algorithms necessarily. Like by the time I left Maximum PC, Facebook wasn't really relevant, and it tested. We had a mandate to not have to worry about that. So, but if you're in a place where you need that Facebook traffic and the Google traffic, to drive your business, then you're basically either you're looking for all of those subcultures that we talked about earlier, and you're trying to either target each one with the most appealing thing, or you're just writing the most oatmeal generic mash to try to capture as many of the vast range of humanity. And it means that you're basically at that point then writing for nobody.
Yes.
Which is an unfortunate, it doesn't feel good.
And you're stuck trying to read the tea leaves of the people who control algorithms, because the visibility into how the algorithms work is completely opaque, right? And it changes every week. So like you're just sort of trying to divine, what you should be doing and how you should get it to people who you want to see it, right?
Right. And it's also like the stated value of algorithms is very not nebulous necessarily, but I think means a more specific thing than a lot of like audience development people or like people at Facebook would like you to think, which is like, it got people to click on it.
Well, look,
did it like like, is it going to draw them back to the publication? There's metrics for that, but like I feel like this would be a whole tangent, but there's a lot of like panic about misinformation on Facebook that's not necessarily unwarranted, but I'm like, someone like seeing something and believing it and having it like inform their worldview versus like looking at it out of curiosity or like scrolling past it are like three very different things. And Facebook doesn't have a great way of like showing the difference between all those things. And I think that's true of when you're like trying to get Facebook traffic as a way of building your audience or publication, you don't really have access to the things that would really meaningfully do that. You're like getting eyeballs. That's kind of it.
Well, but those folks, to your point, those folks are now not making that connection with you as a writer or your publication as a source of valued information. And look, nothing ever went wrong by optimizing for the minutes spent on a piece of content. That's always worked out great. I've learned a lot of really useful things from YouTube where they do that aggressively, like jet fuel can't melt steel beams, and the chemtrails are how they control us. It's a little grim sometimes, but yeah, and the newsletter life has I mean, you're what, a couple of weeks into this now, I guess, maybe a month.
Yeah, I think I started. Maybe it's been 3 weeks now, but yeah, I'm very excited about the prospect of it. I mean, like I've really loved the sort of Substack content renaissance. Like, I think it's important to think about the difference between people who like read for fun and pleasure and people who read for like, I don't know, information or like boredom, like. I think Substack has been great for people who read because they want to read something interesting and for people who want to write something because they're excited about it and not because like there's a news peg about it or there's discourse about it. They're just like, I love this thing and like I want to talk about it. And I want to talk about it to people who are also interested in it. The internet allows us to find that community, however small it might be, but hopefully it's like big enough to sustain the ongoing conversation. It gives us that direct relationship. We don't have to like worry about scaling things. Like it feels more possible than ever to like have a small business kind of presence as a writer and connect with your audience, corny though that is, and not have to be like, we got to have, like, I need to make even though like I would like to make everybody talk about strength training. The impetus is not as severe, maybe, when we're talking about a Substack audience. I'm excited to just be in a place where that's realistic for me. I like hope it stays realistic or like becomes slightly more realistic, frankly. But I think it's really awesome. And like there's so many Substacks that I love reading and like open every time I get them. And I think it's just been great.
Well, it's I was talking to a friend a few months ago and we were talking about, it was right when Clubhouse was starting to take off and before it stopped taking off and started doing the other thing.
Yikes.
And we had this, like we were talking about it and kind of had this epiphany that, the social networks, you always think about them as like Facebook people and Instagram people and Twitter people or whatever. But realistically, it's Twitter is the one for people who are like readers, and Instagram is the one for people who are visually oriented and just want pictures or video. TikTok takes the video thing and just kind of cranks that up to 11. And like the idea that there's an audience on Substack and there's an audience on Instagram and there's an audience for podcasts and there's an audience for video and like all of these different, like you probably, like the thing that took me a long time to realize is that there are people who are interested in the podcast who probably are never going to consume a podcast. And we need to be figuring out how to reach out to people who would be interested in what we make that are newsletter readers or are, I mean, I don't know how we engage with visual thinkers because those people are nightmares. But anyway.
I think you're right. It's like all of these things fill very different niches in my life. Like I'm not going to sit down on the couch and listen to a podcast necessarily, but like if I'm going on a walk, if I'm cleaning my house, if I'm working out, I'll listen to a podcast. And there's like different, and if I'm reading, like we used to have live blogs. Remember live blogs?
I loved live blogging was so much fun.
I thought it was great. And it was very specifically for people who like, I think either couldn't load a video feed, frankly. And obviously like there weren't video feeds of a lot of these things, but like people who wanted to keep up with something and they were like at work and that was sort of the later iteration of it was like you could follow the event without having like a video feed obviously open on your computer. So, different formats are meaningful depending on even like within a single person, what they're doing and what their sort of availability is, whether they have both hands or not, or both eyeballs.
So Casey, bring back live blogs. That's what I'm saying. We need to,
yes.
We got 45 minutes until the next opportunity. We should fire that thing up.
There's an Apple. Yeah, totally.
Is it today?
Yes,
it is.
It is very soon.
I'm so out of this loop, but now I need to get back into it. Maybe I'll
cool.
live tweet it for old time's sake.
But it's kind of cool to be out of the loop, right? Like I'm enjoying just consuming that stuff as a normal human being instead of as somebody who like has to care about it for every moment.
It's also like it's not like it was like 10 years ago. Like the improvements that are happening to phones are not.
Yeah.
I like to think they don't matter as much. And like my iPhone that this iPhone that I'm going to get now in a couple weeks is basically the same one as the one I'm probably going to trade in.
Yeah.
Sometimes good enough is good enough.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's my message also for like everything. Lifting.
It's a good philosophy. It's a good, healthy,
your phone.
Healthy philosophy.
Yeah.
Former Wirecutter editor Casey Johnston. Thank you. No, Casey, the newsletter, again, if you have forgotten, is She's a Beast. You can find it at she'sabeast.substack.com. Casey, thank you so much for coming by. This has been fabulous and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
As always, this is the portion of the show where we thank our patrons.
Thank you, patrons.
Thank you, patrons.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where do you think the comma should go? Thank you, patrons. Thank you, patrons. Or thank you, patrons, and then a pregnant pause.
What about no comma? Just thank you, patrons.
Thank you, patrons. I think there needs to be like a little comma there. Anyway, we really appreciate our patrons because, as always, Brad and Will Made a Tech Pod is a 100% listener-supported show.
It's true.
The commas, it turns out, do not pay the bills.
No. Freeloading commas around here.
I mean, what has a comma ever done for you, Brad?
They just hold the thing up, They just make it take too long.
Yeah, they used to get me in trouble because I put them in the wrong place. I always put them before the and instead of after the and, or maybe after the and instead of before. I can't remember.
Yes, the Oxford rule will get you every time.
Yeah, smarmy Brits. Anyway, we really appreciate everybody who supports the show, whether it's as a patron or just by telling your friends. We had a couple of tweets this week that made me smile because people were very creative in how they promoted the podcast to their friends and social circles, which I love.
Yeah.
And as always, if you want to support the show financially, that gets you access to the Fabulous Tech Pod Patreon, where you can talk about such things as
Discord.
Shit. As always, if you choose to support the show, that gets you access to the Fabulous Tech Pod Discord, which is full of beautiful, smart, nerdy, delightful human beings who have a variety of conversations, including, I started a thread for Deathloop spoilers this morning that I then accidentally stayed in.
Oops. That's the problem. When you make a quarantine, you need to not be in the quarantine if you want to avoid the thing you're quarantining.
I mean, it is true. We made an isolation ward. We are, I think I'm starting to embrace the threads in Discord. I think the Discord implementation of threads is maybe the best I've seen so far.
It's not bad. I was very anti-thread for my experience with Slack because I don't like the way that Slack handles threads, but Discord it's okay. It's tolerable.
Yeah. Slack threads are a pox on the earth.
Yes.
The Discord threads seem okay.
There's a place for them.
But yeah, if you would like to support the show, you can find out how by going to patreon.com/techpod. That's patreon.com/techpod. Again,
patreon.com/techpod.
I heard if you say things 3 times, that's what you're supposed to do.
I heard if you say 3 things 3 times, people will remember them better. What did you hear?
If you say things 3 times, people will remember them better.
Oh.
And as always, every episode, we like to thank our executive producer tier patrons, including Paddle Creek Games, the Fractured Veil video game people or something, Andrew Solosky, the Bunny Fiend, Jacob Chappell, Joel Krauska, Twinkle Twinkie, David Allen, and James Kamek. Thank you all so much for your support. We appreciate it.
Yes.
And like I said, if you can't support the pod financially, we totally get it. Just tell a friend.
Yeah.
Friends are good.
Spread the word. That helps.
That's how new people find the show, it turns out.
I mean, I don't know about you, but I hate self-promotion. So if our glorious, wonderful, generous, kind listeners want to spread the word for us, I will not be opposed.
Yeah, no, I'm terrible at self-promotion.
Oh, it's the worst.
It gives me the creeping heebie-jeebies just to say, something like patreon.com/techpod 3 or 4 times in an episode.
I know, like it's just grating as hell. Patreon.com/techpod, man.
Oh God, I just, but I can't stop saying it at this point.
Who would say a thing like patreon.com/techpod?
Did you mean patreon.com/techpod?
Unfortunately, yes.
That'll do it for us this week. Thank you all so much for your support. We appreciate it, and we will see you all next Sunday. The hey, I got high and to see if weed would help me work out one is especially good, Casey.
Wait, how did we not talk about that?
Oh my God,
we still talk about that?
About it.
We can still talk about it.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay, we lied. We still are going to talk about digital journalism in the 21st century. But first, you got high and worked out, I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah.
How did that go?
So recently, weed was legalized in New York. Very big for us. I'm in Brooklyn.
Congratulations.
So I thought, yes, thank you. I thought it would be nice to sort of celebrate that. It was like closely timed also with 420. So I was like, the column before that was running immediately before that, I was like, it'd be a fun thing to do is trying this sort of thing that
for science.
For science, yes. I've always been sort of curious, and like I think you were talking about how boring running is earlier. Weed use is very popular with like really long distance runners, and many of them reached out to me after this that they were like, I can't do like a long run without being high.
That's baffling.
It's like, yeah,
it's baffling
sort of
to me.
like, it zens you out a little. It makes it less boring, they say.
Well, it also helps if you have like pain. It also helps with the pain stuff. Yeah.
That too.
The stereotype is just of stoners flopped on the couch, not wanting to move. So thinking about
similarly,
exercising.
I was like, this is how I sort of understand weed, and I pretty much only have it when I'm looking to relax. But maybe what elements could it bring to a workout? Time to find out. So I tried it. Some vaping of flour and some edibles. I tried going for a run as well in this article, and it was good. It's sort of it makes it hard. It makes it very hard to like if you're trying to figure out like, okay, I need to an order in which to do things, or like where should I set up my deadlift? That's impossible if you're high. But if you already have the sort of logistics figured out, and like you have to very deliberately write out your program and like how much weight you're lifting and how the sets and reps, you can't be like, oh, should I do a little bit less or a little bit more today? It's like, you got to figure that out before you actually have the weed. But then once you do it, you really feel sort of like very dialed into the physical sensations of it. When I was doing it, I sort of didn't want the workouts to end because I was just like it sounds corny, but like having fun, and it like felt good. And you just kind of want to try all the ways in which it might feel good and like do some stretching and like just lean into it. And it was nice. I enjoyed it. And I've like done it since, like not every time, but you know, if you feel like today I'm not so into working out, what if I have some weed and see if it just gets me over the hump? And then I had a ton of people reach out afterward who were like, oh yeah, I'm like doing bong rips between deadlifts. And I was like, I love that for you. Yeah.
That's cool. Okay.